What's going on, everybody? Jolts here from the Token Minorities, and I am back with my Week 5 team builder of the GBA D-League. This week we are against ItzGregulator and the Los Angeles Clefable, a really exciting matchup against a super strong player. Don't let his record fool you. Yes, he is 1-3 at this point in the season, but he is the best 1-3 team I have seen in a long time. His losses are largely attributed to him being short on time. For each of the first 4 weeks, he's in like 3 or 4 leagues at once, or he was in 3 or 4 leagues at once, and I struggle enough with 2. I really can't even do 2. You saw how I tanked in the NPL in the late season. But he's been doing multiple at a time, and that's why he's been losing games. But this week, that's not the case. He only has the D-League to focus on, so it's definitely going to be a close matchup. Very even, I think, in terms of skill and experience. So it should be a good one for sure. So make sure to check out my opponent, though. He will be linked in the description below. Very high quality content creator, super energetic. I think that's really his selling point, why I think he is really good at what he does. He's really energetic, he's contagious, and I know his fans love him, so if you aren't already familiar with him, just go give him a look real quick, and I think you will enjoy his content. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this a little bit. Unfortunately, I have to record this after the battle already took place. I'm going to try not to, you know, reveal anything throughout all of this, but I've been having all kinds of recording issues this week. My Camtasia decided to kick the bucket, so I had to just fix a bunch of stuff with my Camtasia, and it ended up resulting in me losing my files. And yeah, so I had to re-record this thing, and it's just a pain in the butt. So we're just going to do my best here. And, you know, we'll see how this goes. But it's been quite the week. Just between Camtasia, my capture card breaking, it's just been awful in terms of recording this week, so yeah, just bear with me, I guess. We'll just jump on into this. So my opponent Greg here has access to Zygarde 50, Celesteela, Mega Gallade, Nihilego, Sneasel, Rotom Wash, Alolan Marowak, Whimsicott, Silvally, Vullaby, and the Golisopod, with Zygarde and the Golisopod being his Z captains, and the Silvally, of course, being a mon we've already encountered once this season on Leo's team in week 1, now having to face it again, although I believe it's much less likely of a bring this time around. So the biggest threats against my team on his team are the Zygarde 50 and the Mega Gallade offensively, I feel, especially the Zygarde, as Zygarde is able to just single-handedly sweep teams if you give it 1 or 2 free turns. It's just an absolute monster. Thousand Arrows is an absolutely broken move, and I will not back down from that statement. It's a problem, honestly, and I do have ways to deal with it on my team, but with Zygarde being his Z captain, he could easily run something like Z Crunch or Z Outrage and blow back both my Mew or my Gourgeist with his Z move of choice if he manages to get hazards up and maybe even just a little bit of chip damage. It pretty much just guarantees it. So Zygarde's a huge issue. I really need to build the team that denies Zygarde's setup at all opportunities and basically force him to beat me with something else. That's the general principle behind this team build, is to make him beat me with something besides Zygarde. And just based upon how my mocks for this matchup have gone, I fully expect the Zygarde to be his late game win condition. If that is the case, the team that I have designed will be able to deal with that quite well. Now, I already mentioned the Mega Gallade is also a pretty large threat against my team just because of its breaking ability. Mega Gallade's always going to be a threat to any team that it faces. I don't think Mega Gallade can have a bad matchup because it's such a good Pokemon in format with great priority options as well as a really nice support move pool. He can do so many things with it, and it makes it tough to prep for on my end. And basically, I just need to treat it as if I don't want it to get any free turns either, quite honestly, as +2 Mega Gallade is not something I want to deal with at all, so I don't want to let it have a Swords Dance, don't want to let it have a bulk up either, as either way it's quite a nuisance for my team to take on. So those are the 2 biggest offensive threats against my team, and I guess Nihilego can also kind of be grouped in there as an annoying offensive threat versus me, just because it does have coverage for everything. It is somewhat limited in the fact that he only has 2 Stealth Rockers, being the Nihilego as well as the Alolan Marowak. Those are his only Stealth Rockers, which does limit the Nihilego especially, although I guess he could bring both that and Alolan Marowak. They both match up pretty well. Alolan Whack I don't switch into really at all on my team, so that's also kind of annoying, but then again, thick club boosted hits from Alolan Marowak, nothing switches into that anyways, so that's a problem for any team, quite honestly. The real annoyance about his team is his defensive synergy, and this is why I really feel like this is my hardest matchup throughout the entire season. His defensive synergy is so so difficult for my team to break through, especially, but really any team across the league, because I really do think he drafted his defensive synergy very well. The combination of the Celesteela, Alolan Marowak, and the Rotom Wash, and the Zygarde, honestly, that combination doesn't have common weaknesses. It really doesn't, and it's able to take hits from any type. Like, that combination deals with anything. So just a really well drafted team on his end. I think he's made a few transactions that have made it a lot better. He did have some flaws in his earlier version of this draft, but he made transactions to acquire Rotom Wash and Whimsicott, which really patched up his major weakness to water attacks. And at that point, like, it's just a really solid draft and a huge threat. But specifically, the thing that really just gives me so much trouble defensively is that Celesteela. If you look across my draft, it is able to defensively check a very large chunk of what I have. I have very few ways to OHKO it, even with super effective damage, meaning he can easily run something like a Totemized weakness policy or even just defensive weakness policy and give me a really hard time because I can't OHKO him with a super effective move. He brought a weakness policy set against Aberforth just a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I have to really keep that in mind, but I also have to keep in mind just annoying defensive sets like just leftovers, Leech Seed being able to stall out things like my Scolipede, things like mini Mew variants, even Mega Kangaskhan variants. Like, he can stall out a lot of my team. He's able to switch into and survive hits from a lot of my team. I've got a gnat in my face, been dealing with that kind of infestation this week too, so it's been a great week, guys. But yeah, so Celesteela, a very big nuisance, but let's talk a little bit about how I can approach this matchup and how I can actually turn his defensive advantage in the Celesteela into his weakness. So the Celesteela is very good against me defensively, like I said, but it is also his sole response to several of my offensive threats. For example, Scolipede. Scolipede is able to deal with the rest of his team quite well, except for the Celesteela. So Celesteela is pressured to be the defensive check to Scolipede. Celesteela is also pressured to be the defensive check to certain variants of Tornadus, to certain variants of Mega Kangaskhan, to certain variants of Mew, and etc. And if I build a team that forces Celesteela to be that defensive check to all of those mons, it's going to get worn down. Its only recovery is leftovers and Leech Seed and rest if you count that, but I don't count that because he's not going to bring that. So I really think that I can approach this matchup by overpressuring that Celesteela and opening the door for another member of my team late in game. So that's the general idea that I'm going to be building around here, wearing down that Celesteela. But if you also look at his team, his hazard removal is restricted to a Volibee, and that is not exactly a Pokemon that I can always consider viable in a matchup. Sometimes it's okay, it's fat, I'll give it that, it's fat within a Violite, but my team does spam knockoff for one, and if Volibee gets knocked off, it's obviously much less of a defensive threat, and quite honestly, it's not an offensive threat at all because it's a Volibee. So I don't really see Volibee coming, if I'm being honest. I think I have a lot of ways to abuse it. I have a lot of ways to set up on it, to toxic it, to knock it off, and essentially it'd only be good for defog, and I don't think he can really justify bringing a defogger when the offensive components of my team force him to bring certain defensive members of his team in addition to the Celesteela. Celesteela can't do everything. I think he has to bring the Celesteela, I think he has to bring the Rotom. Zygarde's coming 150%, and Mega Gallade is very likely, and Heligo is very likely, so that just leaves one slot left, quite honestly, out of that bunch. I don't think that slot will be a Volibee. I think it'll be something like an Alolan Marowak, maybe a Sneasel, maybe a Whimsicott. I think those three are all much more likely than a Volibee is in that slot, but you know, I guess we'll see on that. So yeah, so I'm going to hammer on his hazards weakness, as Volibee is the only thing that can remove hazards on his team. I can spike stack, I can set up stealth rocks, and essentially they will be there to stay, which is definitely very nice, and I want to keep the pressure on Celesteela and even Rotom as well, as if I can weaken both of those Pokemon down, I have a very spicy win con here in the back that actually can clean up his team with ease as soon as most of his team, or those two members of his team, are sufficiently weakened. So with all that said, let's hop on over to the Team Builder so we can see what I decided to bring here. So first and foremost, starting this off with the Mew with a relatively predictable EV spread, with the EV spread and moveset with the Will-O-Wisp, Roost, Shadow Ball, and Ice Beam, and essentially max Phys Def on this. was able to just slap on 12 and SPDF because it didn't impact the defensive damage calcs versus the Zygarde specifically, and even the Mega Gallade. So with the combination of Will-O-Wisp and Ice Beam, this Mew beats any variant of Zygarde, which is very nice. At least from full health or after a round of Stealth Rock, I'm able to deal with any variant of DD Zygarde with a Z move. If Stealth Rocks are up, I am not guaranteed to survive an Adamant Z Crunch. I might have to scout that out with other members of my team, but I do actually more expect to see the Z Outrage because that bypasses potential Culprit Berries on my Gourgeist and on my Mew. So with that in mind, this actually should be able to deal with it because the investment allows me to survive an Adamant +1 Z Outrage after Stealth Rock. So that's pretty clutch. I have the Expert Belt on this for two reasons. One being that it can bluff the Culprit Berry against a potential Sneasel. Two being that the Expert Belt allows me to knock out a Zygarde after my Hazards damage. Most Zygardes, unless it's like a very SPDF variant. But if it's like a more offensive variant, basically the speediest Zygarde I might expect is knocked out in one hit after my Hazards with this Ice Beam, which is pretty clutch. The Shadow Ball, also being boosted by the E-Belt, allows me to hit the Alolan Marowak and the Mega Gallade much harder. So a very essential defensive Mon in this matchup. And yeah, if this dies and Zygarde's still around, I'm probably screwed. So if this is gone and Zygarde gets a +1, then I'm probably screwed. I have a lot of ways on my team to deny that +1, but Mew is my way to deal with the +1 Zygarde. So next up is the Scolipede. This is a pretty cool set with Endeavor Spikes, Megahorn, and Aqua Tail. Z Megahorn, and specifically with the Buginium Z, allows me to do a lot of damage to the majority of his team, exceptions being things like the Nihilego, the Alolan Marowak, and I am blanking on what the other... Celesteela. Obviously, Aqua Tail doesn't do a whole lot to Celesteela either, but at least that does hit the Nihilego and the Alolan Marowak a bit harder. Or super effectively, specifically, and Aqua Tail hits the Celesteela a little bit harder, but my main tech for the Celesteela is actually Endeavor, as 140 EVs in HP and 4 in SPDF actually allow me to survive a Fire Blast from a Celesteela from full health, as well as a Flamethrower from Celesteela after Stealth Rock, and actually I survive an Air Slash from an uninvested Celesteela from full health as well, leaving me at a perfect HP to fire off an Endeavor and severely weaken a Celesteela into range of entry to Hazards, making the rest of my team have a very nice time. So this is the first of really 3 Pokemon meant to chip down the Celesteela for my win con to be able to clean up late game. And you see spikes on this as well. I already mentioned I want to force the issue with Hazards, as I do need Hazards up for my win con to be able to ensure a knockout on a variety of fatter members of his team, so spikes are nice for that, and obviously outpacing base 110 being the Mega Gallade. So next up is the Mega Kangaskhan. This is a bit of a tank set with 100 EVs in HP, and then just, you know, the nuke investment in offenses, or specifically physical attack, with Sucker Punch, Facade, Thunder Punch, and Ice Punch. So this basically is my free switch into the Rotom Wash. My general game plan versus the Rotom Wash that I fully expect to come is to first go into my Seismitoad on a potential Volt Switch or Hydro Pump versus likely a Torrentee, which is what the Rotom would come in on. And then I can double into Kang, as by doubling into Kang on that turn, he either goes for an HP Grass or a Toxic, or maybe a Wisp or something, and regardless, my Kang really doesn't care because of Facade and because HP Grass does 0 to me, and essentially by getting this thing in on Rotom Wash, it forces him to go into whatever his defensive response is. If the Rotom was his defensive response to Kang, then I'm in good shape because I do have Facade and there's no other way Rotom can really deal with this. Otherwise, he doesn't really have good defensive responses to this at all. I kind of think he might use Celesteela as his response to this, and I don't really think he can afford to run Rocky Helmet on that Celesteela either because of how essential it is defensively. He needs to keep that health as high as possible, kind of making leftovers essential. So Kang might be able to do a lot of work in this game. With a Thunder Punch on this, even if he's Rocky Helmet, I can do a ton of damage to that incoming Celesteela, continuing to whittle it down so that other members of my team, specifically the win con, can clean up the game. So Ice Punch for the Zygarde specifically, Thunder Punch for the Celesteela specifically, Facade for general coverage, and Sucker Punch to hit the Alolan Marowak, as well as priority chip the Mega Gallade and the Nihilego. So next up is the Torn. This is a set that was heavily inspired by the fact that I missed two crucial Hurricanes, kind of crucial Hurricanes last week against Aster, so I was not about to run Hurricane this week, quite honestly, because if I lost 2 games in a row to Hurricane misses, I probably would go on Mad Tilt, and I wasn't willing to risk that. So we're bringing an Acrobatics Physical Torn T this week for my own sanity, basically, but it still matches up pretty well against his team, I felt, as it does either force in the Rotom or the Celesteela. In either case, knocking off either of those is really nice in terms of denying longevity for both of those options, as they don't have great recovery. So knockoff is nice for that. Acrobatics is very, very good without an item. I am running itemless just to make sure I can immediately check a Mega Gallade, as if he is an SD Mega Gallade and I still have an item on this before, you know, I can pop a berry or something, Acro can't kill, and I actually could just lose my Torn and be in a really bad position against Gallade. So needed to go itemless on this. Bulk up to make sure I can set up alongside things like Bulk Up Gallade. I can set up alongside potentially Zygarde if needed, and basically win out in that regard, and Taunt to deny setup again from the Zygarde. This was the spot I really was back and forth on. I really wanted Superpower just because that gives me a stronger option to hit Rotom and Celesteela, but Taunt, I don't know, it's really tough because Taunt denies setup. I technically could set up alongside Zygarde as well with having just bulk up alongside it, but I don't want to allow him to get free boosts just in case I don't win that exchange 1v1. I cannot allow that to happen. I will not allow him to beat me with Zygarde. So that's the Torn set. Very fat as well. With this 36 investment in Spadef and 244 HP, I can actually survive a modest Scarf Power Gem from a Nihilego from full health, which is kind of nice. It allows me to knock off the Choice Scarf, meaning that it can't check my Torn later, and also just meaning that my Scolipede will be able to outspeed it without the speed boost, as I don't have Protect on Scolipede this week. I might need to be able to immediately check it, potentially, depending on the situation. So being able to knock off the Choice Scarf is nice. Again, this would also be an area where Superpower is kind of nice to have, but Acro is also pretty effective against Nihilego just because it's like super frail on the defensive side. So that's the idea with the Torn. I believe I'm just outspeeding, I think it might be Sneasel. Let me verify on that. Whatever his fastest option is, Whimsicott. It's outspeeding Whimsicott, and this is also a pretty nice switch into Whimsicott as well, just because I am naturally bulky and can take hits from it. So next up is the Diancie. This is the win con. So the combination Scolipede, Mega Kang, Torn T are all meant to weaken down Celesteela and Rotom, because Celesteela and Rotom, it turns out, are the only counters, they're not even counters, Celesteela is, are the only true checks and counters to this Diancie set. Weakness Policy, Trick Room, Dual Stab, Power Gem and Moonblast, and Earth Power sweeps his entire team at +2, and actually can almost sweep his entire team without any boost at all. But Weakness Policy is just there for the insurance, and yeah, this is the win con. Basically, I need to weaken down Celesteela so that it can't switch into a Power Gem after I get up my Trick Room, which I don't think will be too hard with these mons that I have, because I really do think they force in the Celesteela quite well, I feel. Even the Mew, honestly, forces in the Celesteela a bit. I can help the issue where I'm breaking down that Celesteela. So yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Try to Trick Room up on things like even the Rotom potentially, as I actually survive the combination of Hydro Pump and even Ice Shard from a Sneasel, and I definitely survive the combination of Hydro Pump from Rotom and E-Speed from Zygarde, as long as he's not banned, and even so I might have a chance to live that. So yeah, this is really good against this priority, outside of Aqua Jet from Galistopod, but I don't expect that to come. So yeah, not a whole lot else to say on this set, except it kind of wins the game as long as I play it properly. I just need to set it up on, like I said, potentially the Rotom. I could set it up on the Gallade, set it up on a non-Iron Tail Sneasel. I could even set it up on a Zygarde, as I can take 1,000 arrows from Zygarde with relative ease, and that would trigger my Weakness Policy. Even a Choice Band of Zygarde does not Okomi from full health, I believe. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Zygarde's only base 100 attack. So yeah, I can set up on a lot of things on his team, and yeah, as long as Celesteela is weakened and Rotom is in range of +2 Moonblast if I get the Weakness Policy, or just a unboosted Moonblast if I don't get the Weakness Policy, then this does just win the game. So that's where the spikes and the Stealth Rock really come into play, though. I need those to help me put Rotom and Celesteela into range, specifically Stealth Rock in those cases, but also the spikes to help put Gallade if he's fatter in range, to help put Zygarde if he's fatter in range, etc. So yeah, this is the win con that all these Pokemon are pointing towards to try to make a win in this game. And last up, we have the Seismitoad, just a Stealth Rock Rendo Berry set, Fizz Def, just a utility Pokemon in this game, quite honestly. Scald for general coverage and burns. Makes Gallade not a free switch in. Stealth Rock for obvious reasons. Toxic to help out versus the Rotom, for example. Also nice for the Zygarde potentially. Also nice for just a variety of things on his team. Toxic just a good move. And Icy Wind for the Zygarde to make sure that cannot set up in my face either. And worst case scenario, he'll be drop speed, or at least neutral speed, I guess. Meaning that I can check him with my bulkier Torn and or my bulkier Scolipede if I'm still at high health. Also, Mew should be able to take hits from regardless, and Icy Wind does a lot of damage to Zygarde. So yeah. So that is the team. I might have rushed that. I'm not sure what my time is on this recording, but you know, this is my like second or third time trying to do this because of all these recording issues. So yeah, alright, that's a mouthful. My throat hurts. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. I hope you did enjoy, and I hope you're looking forward to our Week 5 battle coming out tomorrow against ItzGregulator in the Los Angeles Clefable. Make sure, again, to go check out his channel. Will be linked in the description below, along with all kinds of other GBA-related links. Links to my front office guys, my graphics guys, all the people who helped me out. Go check them out down there. Not sure if you can see my fingers. Go check them all out, and I'm going to go ahead and let you go here. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.